Hi, my name is Daniel Walter Scott. In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to create a responsive website using Dreamweaver. Now, we're going to use Dreamweaver 2015. If you're using an older version like 2014 or CS6, you should be able to play along just fine. The core principles are the same. Now, we're going to assume just a tiny bit of web design skills. So if you are brand new to web design and haven't done anything before, you might want to try one of my other courses that's kind of more aimed at people learning the fundamentals of web design as well as responsive. So we're going to jump straight into responsive here. And before we start building the thing in Dreamweaver, we just need to look quickly at the terms that get thrown around with responsive. So there's a couple of words like adaptive and fluid and liquid. We need to find out what they are so that we can separate them out and start building what is called a responsive website. So let's have a quick look at that now.
All right, the best way to see the differences between responsive and adaptive is a really cool site called Liquidaptive. Now this one here, liquidaptive.com, is by Nicholas Davison. Thank you, Nicholas. It is just a really basic layout, but see this top right here, it allows you to go through and look at, say, static. Static is how websites originally were. Now they don't resize at all. Okay, that's how we used to do it. Design a website and hope that it fit in the screen. Then we move to, say, some of these liquid options. So liquid and fluid are a term that gets kind of thrown around together. So they essentially mean the same thing. What happens is it's just a percentage-based website. So watch this, click, hold, drag, drag, drag. Now, it's fine, it looks responsive, but it gets down to these smaller sizes. You can see this blue box over the side here, it just gets thinner until it's unusable. So that's a full percentage website called liquid or fluid. Then we moved into adaptive. Okay, then adaptive is quite cool. What it does is it does a similar sort of thing as responsive, as it adjusts depending on the screen size. Watch this, so there's a desktop. You can see there's a smaller desktop view, there's a tablet view, and then we get down to a mobile view. Adaptive is different in the fact that it's the same all the way across here. You can see this wasted space on the right-hand side. It finally gets to a point and just redesigns itself. Okay, and we've got all this wasted space over here. So essentially, when you're building an adaptive site, you build, say it's mobile, tablet, and desktop version, you just build 3 separate layouts and break between those ones. Now, responsive is better in the fact that, watch this, I use responsive. You see it fills the screen like liquid, okay, but it has those media breaks like adaptive does. So it goes percentage, 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 and then it goes, and this little blue bar here gets a little too thin eventually, watch this, and it snaps. And what they do is they decide to move it down to the bottom here. There's the blue bar being redesigned to fit with this different screen size. Watch this, if I make it a bit smaller, it gets down to a kind of more mobile side. But you'll notice there's no wasted space. Can you see it's a mixture of these media breaks from adaptive and also the percentages from liquid. Okay, best of both worlds. Now, which one should you use? Responsive is definitely the kind of buzzword at the moment. I use both. Okay, there's nothing wrong with adaptive versus responsive. Responsive uses the screen space a lot better, and that can be really important, especially if you've got a really strong kind of mobile component to your website, because when you're at this large size, responsive is nice, but it's not. For me personally, it's not the most essential part. It's when you get down to these smaller mobile sizes where you are dealing with some really small screen sizes where responsive fills and uses the space completely. Adaptive though, I find, say designers tend to like adaptive more because you only have to design 1, 2, and 3 different versions. Okay, so a mobile, desktop, and as a kind of traditional designer coming from a graphic design background, it's really nice to kind of have some sort of static page sizes to work with. Now, responsive takes a lot more work, okay, because you have to work out what happens when it's this size, but also this size, this size, this size, this size. So there's a lot more to consider. There's this kind of complete movement through all the different designs. This website here is fine and doesn't break down at all, but I work on sites that are responsive and you end up with tables and groups of images and long headings that end up breaking a bit funny on different things. So you end up having to kind of create lots of media queries to change it at different times. So sometimes I build an adaptive site because it works for that project, and quite often it's for projects that are going to be set and forget, or like little throwaway websites where I just need to quickly make it and I don't have to really spend a lot of time getting my head into responsive and what it's going to do with all these sizes. So if you're a one-man band and doing a little project, you might think adaptive might work for you, go that way. Responsive is definitely the way. Clients are coming to me now and saying, I want a responsive site, and they want that full use of the site. If you are definitely doing a bigger project, you need to look at responsive. A really cool site to look at is Smashing Magazine. Watch this. If I drag it in, watch all the different changes. So we're watching this menu up here, we're watching this left menu and this right set of ads. So watch this. If I go in, eventually this left menu disappears. Watch this. If I go a bit lower, they've pushed the ads out. This guy's appeared back. Can you see there's names along the top here? Watch this. If I get a little bit smaller, we've moved to this kind of like mobile version. So there's all these kind of like different breaks. My favorite one is, see this when it says WP, you make it a little bit bigger, it says WordPress because it doesn't fit. Okay, so this is an amazing team with a little bit more resources than I tend to have. It's just generally me building websites. So they're able to spend a lot more time working on these kind of responsive fixes and workarounds to make everything look good at every size. All right, now let's go and have a look at how responsive works in Dreamweaver. All right, so I've loaded up Dreamweaver 2015. You should be able to play along with 2014, Dreamweaver CS6, and potentially any future options as well, because the principles should remain the same. The tools might be slightly different. Now, to get started, 2015 has this big extract panel. I like in the top right here, I like to click extract and move back to design. Design's where I'm the most comfortable. And it should load up probably with live view to get started, probably split view. Okay, and what I would like to do is I'm going to move to live view and just show you that this is just a templated website, just to show you what a media query looks like in a working website. So if I am in live view, I'm going to drag this along and you'll notice that, can you see the logo move from there? Okay, switches over to the middle here. There's a mobile, there's a tablet, and there's a desktop view as well. So let's have a look at it. Now, all media queries are housed in this thing called CSS. Can you see the .css in the top left there? So it doesn't really matter what it's called. This one's called about page style.css. Yours might be called something else. We're going to click on that and we're going to go to code view just to see the CSS code by itself. Now this one here is not particularly long CSS style sheet, but it's big enough. So what we're looking for is something called the @media query. So easier way to do it is do find. So I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to go down to find and replace, and I'm just going to type @media and click find next. You'll see on this code there is one here, and can you see it says @media only screen and minimum width of this one here is 1025. It just means that for screens this size, 1025 and above, it's going to apply these styles to it. Okay, so let's pretend it's to do with a font. We could say with desktops, it's going to be Arial. But if I look for another media query, okay, here's another one for mobile. This is for devices that are between 285 pixels and 480. And it's going to apply this style. Let's say it's font still. It's going to apply, let's say, Times New Roman. Okay, and there should be a third one in here. There is one for tablets, and it's between this size of 481 and this 1024. Now this just means that, let's say we have our font again. We could say this one here was Comic Sans. Okay, so it'd mean that if you were viewing it on mobile, you'd be looking at, what did I say, Times New Roman. If you were looking at a tablet, it'd be Comic Sans, and on desktop, it would be Arial. So that is where the media queries end up in a working website. Let's close it down and create our own site now. All right, so the first thing we need to do if we're building any site in Dreamweaver is we're going to create a site. So go to site, go to new site. Let's give it a name. I'm going to call mine test responsive. Okay, where we're going to stick it, okay, on the local site means somewhere on your hard drive. So I'm going to hit this browse button. So I'm going to put mine on my desktop. I'm going to make a new folder and I call this one responsive. Okay, and I'm going to click choose. Then I'm going to click save. That tells Dreamweaver that when I create my pages, to all put them in that folder on my desktop. Let's create our first page. So let's go to File, New. All right, and we're going to start with a new document. It's going to be HTML, and we're going to click Create. Okay, so we get this basic layout. You might be in Live View, you might be in Code View. Let's move to Live View for the moment, and we're going to save this document. So go to File, go to Save. Let's give it a name. We're going to call it ours Test. And we're going to click Save. So the first thing is create the HTML page. Now, the next thing we need to do is create our CSS sheet. So it's another page that holds all the code for our styling, and that's where the media queries for a responsive design go. To do that, there's a few different ways. We're going to go to over here to the CSS designer, okay, where it says sources. We're going to hit the little plus button. We're going to go create new CSS style. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it main. You can call it anything you like. I'm going to click OK. Right, so now I have a HTML page and it looks like this in code. That's my HTML page. I'm going to look at the main.css. See along the top here in the top left, this is what's called the related documents bar. So I'm going to click on that and it shows me the code for the CSS, which is styles everything. These things are connected, all right? But the styles go in this page and the actual content for our page, things like the text and the images, go in the HTML. So first thing I want to do is let's go back to live view. I'll show you on the desktop what we end up with. So on Finder, on my desktop, there's my responsive site, and there's my test.html I just made, and can you see it's a separate CSS sheet for main. What I like to do in Dreamweaver is have them both open, because this little thing toggles between the two, but I quite like having both of them open, so you can right click or control click on a Mac, and where it says main.css and open as a separate file. Can you see there's a second tab open? So it's nice to have both of them open while I'm teaching. You don't have to do this. I'm going to be at test.html, I'm going to be at live view, and over here, watch this, if I resize this little banner, it goes from a single column to this mixed column. I'm going to go down to the single column because I prefer it. I'm going to double click where it says DOM, make it smaller, and can you see I can stretch these little guys out just to make it easier for you guys to follow along. So I'm going to make properties a little bit smaller, I'm going to move my selectors down a little bit, and my media down. To add our first media query, what we need to do is drag this little slider along to where we want it to be. So I'm going to put this one, so we're going to put in a desktop version, we're going to put in a tablet version and a mobile version. So we'll start with mobile. So for a mobile side, we're going to make it, typically at the moment, this 2015, so very common size for mobile, there's lots of different shapes around, is 380 pixels, and that does most of the things like iPhones and some of the popular Android phones. So we're going to put in our first media query here. To do that, we drag it along. We can change it afterwards if you can't drag it perfectly, and then I want you to hit the little plus button. Then it comes to this min and max. Okay, so click on it, either one, we can change it afterwards. What we want to do is change it from minimum to maximum, and we want 380. It just means that everything from 0 to 180 is going to be considered this one called mobile. Where we're going to stick the CSS that's been created, don't want to create a new one, we're going to put it in the one we've already made earlier. So we're going to stick it in main.css. Click OK. Up here we get this lovely little color. If you're using an earlier version of Dreamweaver, you're not going to have this little colored bar at the top here. It's a nice new feature. And let's have a look in the CSS. So we're going to jump out to this extra file here. You can see here, there's our media query that has a maximum width of 380. Now, it's really common. I'm going to put a couple of returns in. Luckily in CSS, you can put returns in and it doesn't do anything to the code. I'm going to add a comment. There's a little button here in Dreamweaver to add a comment. Now, we're going to do a CSS comment, which is this /*. Okay, that's that one there. And I'm going to have mobile device. So this comment here, okay, comment is for people only. The computer ignores it because it's wrapped up in this little /* and the star / at the back. This is good for adding notes to yourself, just to know that this is to do with the mobile device. Right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our test.html. The next one we're gonna drag out is, we'll do our desktop next. You can do the tablet next, but I find when I'm demoing, it's nice to show you this. So I'm gonna make this 950. I'm gonna add a media query, hit plus. I'm going to make this minimum, which just means that 950 and above is going to be our desktop. Okay, so create new CSS, we're going to make it to the existing main one. We're going to click OK, and you'll see from there and above is going to apply the styles for our desktop. And if we have a look at main.css, there it is. There's our second one, and this is going to be a minimum width and above of 950, and this, I'm going to copy and paste this, and this is going to be our desktop view. Okay, desktop view. Let's go back and to test. So I'm going to drag it over here. Actually, it doesn't really matter where you put it to get started with, because you can adjust it afterwards. So I'm going to put it anywhere in the middle here, hit plus, click any of these sides, because with tablet, what we're going to say is it's going to be a minimum width of 381, which is one more pixel than mobile, and it's going to go right up to 949. Okay, so 1 pixel less than our desktop view. I'm going to put it in our main.css, click OK. You'll see everything below 381 is going to be using the mobile styling. Everywhere between 381 and 949 is going to be tablet, and 950 and above is going to be our desktop view. We've got a nice little color codes for that. So let's have a look at the CSS. You can see here's our last one. Right, and here's our tablet view at the bottom. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in, and we're going to put in tablet view. All right, now we've got mobile at the front, desktop in the middle here, and tablet at the view. It might be a nicer order to say, let's put the tablet in between these two. Right, so I've got mobile, then tablet, then desktop views. Great. If you don't want to have to go through and do it in design view, okay, if you prefer working in code, it's very easy to copy and paste. Okay, and do a third view, you might do desktop large. So for really big screen sizes like some of the big iMacs. And what you can do is go through it and obviously just edit it here. Okay, edit the code. Okay, so I'm only going to do 3 views for this. Let's go to File, and I'm going to click Save All. Save All allows me to save the HTML and the CSS in one go. Right, and let's jump back to test. Right, if you're not sure which sizes to use for your different media queries, because they do change over time depending on the different models that come out and what's popular, a really good website, so I'm going to go to Chrome, and I'm going to go to a website called mydevice.io/devices. So mydevice.io/devices. This is a really easy to use site made by Rafael Gautier. There he is down here. Now, what I like to do is look at most common smartphones, and you can see the widths. So don't worry about the physical widths, you're looking for the CSS widths. So you can see iPhone 6 is 375. Okay, don't worry about the heights in this case, because websites are happy to scroll, but you can look at these. It's why it's really hard to pick a number. You got to kind of guess and say, all right, iPhone 5 or the 6 is the most popular at the moment, and use that width. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our div tag. So a div tag is our container, and we're just going to do a really simple thing in this class to show you. So we're going to make a container, put some basic text in it, and show you how to change it depending on what device is viewing it. So the first thing we need to do is add a div tag. So we're going to go to the insert menu here, and we're going to use HTML. If it grayed out like that, okay, just have your cursor clicked in the white area over here. Make sure you're on the insert panel. If you can't find the insert panel, it's under window. Click down to insert, so the top there, and then make sure it's set to HTML, and then let's click insert div. So it's put a div tag in, it's got some basic text in it. I'm going to replace this text with some other text. Okay, so I've got a bit of text. This is in my HTML. So if I go into the code of the HTML, so if I go to code, make sure it's on source code, you can see in my HTML document, there's not much, but I've got a div tag with some text in it. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to live view. Clicking on here, I should see this little blue window. I'm going to click on plus and I'm going to make up a class. Now a class is a way of identifying this div tag in code. So I'm going to call this one box1. Click enter. I'm going to add this styling to it in the main.css, and I'm going to pick a media query. So I want to put it to this one here where it says max width 380. That's my mobile one. So I want to say when it's in mobile, click enter. I'm going to switch over to CSS Designer, okay, and I'm going to make sure it says main.css. I'm going to make sure it says min width 380, which is my mobile. I'm going to click on the style that I just made called box1, and down in properties, I'm going to uncheck where it says show set. So that just shows me the ones that are already made for it, and there's none, so it's empty. If I turn that off, it's going to show me all the things I can do, and there's quite a few things I can do with the styling. I'm going to do a background color and maybe a font size. So along the top here, let's change the background color, which is this fourth little icon, drops you down the list. It says background color, drop that down. I'm going to use this little hue slider to drag it up and down to pick a color. Once you've found a hue that you like, I'm going to make it green, and I'm going to click anywhere here in the green area and click enter on my keyboard. So what you'll notice now is that nothing's changed. But watch this, because I'm in tablet, if I scroll down, drag this little slider down to mobile, it goes green. If it doesn't grow green, what you sometimes need to do is in Dreamweaver, so what I'll do is go main CSS, box 1, go down to background color and pick a different green or put in the same green again. Sometimes it can jam up and not display. It'll work on the website, but previewing sometimes doesn't do it. Right, let's do a file save all just to make sure everything's saved. So it looks good, green in mobile, nothing in tablet, nothing in desktop. What we'll also do is in mobile, we'll make the font a little bit bigger so that we can see it easier on a mobile device. To do that, make sure we're on main CSS, we're on our 380 pixels, which is our mobile. We're on box 1, that's the thing we're styling. Go to text, which is the second icon in. Click color. Now to pick white, you've got a couple of options. You can drag this little slider to the top of white. I missed it. Let's drag it up to white, or you can drag this little slide bar up to white, or you can type in FFFF. So 6 Fs will give you the white color and hit enter on your keyboard. So the text in here has gone white, but you can see not in tablet, but only in mobile. And let's pick a font. So let's go down to text, go down to font size. I'm going to click the word where it says medium. I'm going to pick M's. EMs is what we use to style font sizes. Now let's make it nice and big. Let's go 2.5 EM and hit enter on your keyboard. And you can see it's quite big text. Great. So let's have a look at our CSS. So let's jump over here and you'll see under this media query for our mobile, which is 380, it's created a style for box. You can see it puts a full stop in front of it. That indicates that it's a class style, and that is what we need to style our box. Now let's put a background color code of this, okay, which is our green. It's got a color, which is our text color of white, and it's got a font size of 2.5 ems. Now let's jump back into our HTML. Let's drag this little slider, okay, to tablet. And what I'd like to do now is add another style. So I want it to be in main, but I want it to be in this one that says min width and max width. Okay, that's our tablet one. So click in there and I'm going to create a new selector. Okay, and it's pick box 1. So full stop box 1. If it doesn't pick it automatically, what you can do, it doesn't really matter whether it's automatically, you can just type in box full stop box 1 and click enter on your keyboard, and that will work just as well. Right, so what I'd like to do is the background color. So in properties, I'm going to click the 4th icon along, background color. I'm going to make this one tealy blue. Okay, so dragging the hue slider up and down, drag the circle around. When you're ready, click enter. Right, and it's updated nicely over here. So when it's at mobile, it's green. When it's at tablet, it is this teal color. I'm going to make the font a color of white. Click enter. And I'm going to make the font size ems. I'm going to type in 1.5 ems. Okay, so it is really big at mobile, a little bit smaller at tablet, and I'm going to move out to desktop, and I'm going to run through that process again. So main CSS, I'd like to style the min width 950, which is my desktop. I'm going to click a new selector. It's pick box 1. Now, if it doesn't remember, you can go through and type it in there, full stop box 1. And I'm going to click enter on my keyboard. And the properties panel comes alive. Click background, pick a background color. I'm going to pick purple. Why am I picking these colors? I'm cheating and just picking the colors that they've used in Dreamweaver here, but I'm going to pick font color. I'm going to make it white. I am going to go down to font size. I'm going to pick EM. I'm going to make this 0.8 EMs. Okay, 0.8. So it's made it quite small. So let's have a look at them all. Desktop, small and purple, medium and teal at tablet, and big and green at mobile. Let's jump to our CSS, and you can see in here, mobile device has box 1, and it's styling it this way. That same box 1, if it's in tablet view, does something different. It does a different color. Okay, it does the tealy green. Now, in our last one here, our desktop view, the same box, okay, has a different style. So that's the connection. In your HTML, you have this one thing. So I'm going to go to HTML, I'm going to go to code, make sure it's source code. I've got this one little thing that says I am box 1. Okay, it's a class. In my CSS styles, it's got 3 different versions of that same box 1. The tablet, the mobile, the desktop view. So we've just done some basic things with color and the font sizes. And where it comes down to responsive stuff is you end up changing a lot of things like the widths of the divs. So let's just do a real quick one as a demonstration. So I'm back at test. I'm going to be at live view. I can see that my div at the moment is spanning the whole width. So it's going one side all the way to the other. If I go out to say desktop and I want to make it so it's only maybe say 70% of the width, so I can fit in another div tag here. So say there's a bit of an advertising box on this side. What I can do is I can go into my main.css, pick my desktop view, click on the box one that's already there now. You only have to put it in once and then you can edit that one thing again. And at the top of this little list here, this first little icon, I can put in the width. And when you're dealing with widths for responsive, you're dealing with percentages. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to percent, and I'm going to make this 70%. Click enter. You can see it's made it 70%, giving me room to put in this other div tag. Let's scroll it down to tablet. You can see it's back to 100. So desktop 70%, but at tablet it's taking the full width up. Same on mobile. Let's look at one of the other things you need to be aware of when you're doing a responsive site is that we've dealt with just the mobile, tablet, and desktop. Let's look at, say there are some things that you want to change for all of them. You don't want to reiterate the things like, say, the font style. So at the moment, it's defaulting to something like Times New Roman. Say you want to change it to Arial, but there's no point writing it in desktop, tablet, and in mobile. You're just repeating yourself. What you can do is, let's go to the main.css. Okay, if you put anything above, so after this character set here, okay, anything before your first media query, that if it appears here, it will be global unless you override it further on in your cascade, okay, in your style sheet. What that means is this is called the global style. So if I put anything above this first media query, it'll apply to all of them, right? Unless it has been overridden later on. What that means is that it will be Arial for mobile, but when it gets to tablet, tablet conflicts and says, I want to be Comic Sans. Comic Sans will win because it's further down the cascade or further down this little code list. All right, and that will mean that because desktop is after as well, it will become Comic Sans. Kind of confusing. Let's have a look at it and do it. So let's go back to test.html. I like being in design view. It's where I'm most comfortable. We're going to look at changing the styling for everything. What we could do is we could cheat, and if you knew CSS, you could type it in here. That's fine. And that's totally a way of doing it. I prefer working in design view. I'm more visual. Let's go to test. Now over here in main CSS, instead of picking one of these three, there's this little global one. Global means I'm going to put it above everything, and it's going to apply to everything unless it's been overwritten. So in global, I'm going to click the little plus. It's picked my .box one. Click enter on my keyboard. Make sure he's highlighted, and I'm going to say the font is going to be font family. I'm going to pick, say, Gill Sans Myriad. So I'm going to pick one of this list. Click enter. And you'll notice that my desktop view has become this Gill Sans. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and you can see there it's Gill Sans, but big and white and tealy background. And at mobile, it's very big Gill Sans. Okay, let's look at the CSS. In the CSS, you can see here, there's this one called box one, and it's changed the font family. And because there's no other conflicts down here, it's all going to apply to mobile, mobile device, tablet view, and desktop view. What we could do, just to prove my point, is I'm going to select this whole line that says font family, scroll down, and I'm going to, in desktop view, put underneath my width, put an enter in, get that thing to line up, and instead of Gill Sans, I'm going to put in, say, I'm going to delete everything except Arial. So if I now go back to Arial, right, if I go back to my test.html, if it doesn't work, just make sure you've done file save all. Okay, I'm going to scroll out, so it's still Gill Sans, it's still Gill Sans, but I want to get to desktop, it's going to override that and go, hey, I'm Arial. See, it's gone to the plain old Arial instead of Gill Sans. It looks very similar. I should have used a better font, but hey, we've got the principles of it. Right, so that's our introduction into how responsive websites work in its kind of basic form. This demonstration wasn't intended to be a full build of a website. I've got another lesson that is that. Check the links below for a link to that, where I go from complete beginning of Dreamweaver all the way through to a full working responsive website online, including hosting and all the other things that go along with website design. And if you want the class files for this particular file just to have a working version, check the link in either the comments or the caption below, and that'll take you and you'll be able to download that and have a look at a working version. You're sure to have some questions, drop them in the comments. I'm pretty good at keeping up with those comments. And if you have any criticisms of the course, things you liked, things you didn't, I'm teaching you responsive web design. I'd like you to help teach me how to run better online courses. My name is Daniel Walter Scott. Haere rā, I'll see you again.